Obsessed, he was compelled to act out, but who was he obsessed with? Was Bryan watching the girls that night while they were out? Was he hiding in his car while the girls were at the grub truck, watching his target? Who was his target? Or was he at the house and circling the area, waiting for his target to arrive home? 2 of the victims were not expected to be there that night, but Maddie and Xana were still living there at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. Obsessed with his target, he arrives to play out his fantasy, but instead of finding just one girl in the bedroom, in one small bed, there are 2 girls. Did he even realize at first, in the dark, that there were 2 girls? He most likely wanted to have one target to himself in that bedroom. With Kaylee visiting and staying in Maddie's bed for the night, she also became a victim. Then on his way down, he encountered Xana and Ethan. Xana was up very late, still on her TikTok, and receiving a DoorDash order. Was Xana sharing the food with Ethan? Was it for the 2 of them? Both Xana and Ethan might have been awake. From outside the home, we see Maddie's window visible from the parking lot, just behind the house. That large area surrounded by trees was perfect for Bryan to hide out in the dark and watch Maddie's lit window. Seeing her at night from that window, he probably watched on many occasions. How would he have known or imagined that he was going to find 2 girls in the one bed? Is it possible Bryan had been in the house before, going in while no one was there, and having a look at the inside? He would have finally seen up close the room he watched from the outside and seen online in many photos. All these details make me think Maddie was his target. Her window was most visible from the parking area. The sheath was found beside her. Kaylee was found in Maddie's bedroom and Maddie's bed, and she was just there to visit Maddie before she left for her new job, which she had lined up in Texas. Was Bryan Kohberger obsessive? We know now the investigation has uncovered digital evidence showing that Bryan had been at the victim's home location on at least 12 different occasions. With a case like this, we have a shocking example of a disturbed individual. But keep in mind that people are multifaceted, and there will most likely be some unexpected personality issues happening with an extreme case like this. As we discover the facts and motivations of the perpetrator, we might find ourselves not only surprised, but unable to understand the psychological implications. Far beyond the normal day-to-day attention to detail and routine many of us have, this perpetrator is most likely lacking the ability to relate to others and form any connections in a healthy, caring, and enjoyable way. We know Bryan had complained of visual snow and other emotional issues or lack of connection with his family and others in his life. There were a lot of dark thoughts in his writing. Does this imply he saw the victims as objects? Did he lack the ability to empathize and see them as human beings, instead seeing his target as a thing, a 3-dimensional image he followed online? Will an examination of Bryan's computer show and prove that he was obsessed and stalking the victims online, watching every little thing they post and obsessing over their photos and videos, finding every connection, and then eventually carrying out the actions in reality? What was his plan for the night of the crime? Would Bryan expect to find 2 girls in one bedroom and in the same bed? Is that likely? It is more likely he imagined finding one girl in Maddie's bed. Had Bryan focused in on one of the victims, Maddie for example, then followed her online, seeing all of her photos on Instagram, then seeing her friends' photos and videos, eventually taking the next step and going to her home? Or did he see her at work, watching from afar, or make an attempt to actually approach her and talk to her, getting closer? What leads to stalking behavior? Stalking encompasses a desire to exert control over a victim. That drive could emerge from a romantic relationship, warding off suitors, or trying to win over a new partner. It could also arise from the fantasy of a relationship formed entirely in the person's mind, such as in the case of celebrity stalking, or it could have its roots in a mental health condition, such as borderline personality disorder. Why do people become stalkers? Perpetrators are often motivated to control, humiliate, frighten, manipulate, embarrass, or take revenge on the victim. Romantic motivations are also at play, such as wooing a new mate or scaring away potential suitors. Mental health conditions often appear in those who become stalkers. Research suggests that half of one sample of stalkers had a disorder, such as antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, or borderline personality disorder. Borderline is particularly prominent in women stalkers. As researchers continue to study the topic, they've put forth different categories of stalking, such as romantic, stalking a former partner; lust, a serial predator; love scorned, rebuffed after expressing interest in someone; celebrity, stalking a famous figure; political, motivated by ideological agreement or disagreement; revenge, fueled by anger or resentment; and cases of murder for hire. What is cyberstalking? Cyberstalking refers to any form of stalking that relies on technology. It is a consistent pattern of behavior, and the content is typically threatening, disturbing, or dangerous. Examples of cyberstalking include the following: repeatedly sending unwanted messages via email or a social media platform; tracking someone via GPS without their consent; monitoring online activity without consent; releasing sensitive or personal information about a person online; impersonating the individual in chat rooms or online platforms; installing a camera on a person's computer to view or record them without consent. The legal definition of stalking varies by state, but the United States Department of Justice defines the term as a course of conduct directed at a specific person that would cause a reasonable person to fear for his or her safety or the safety of others, or suffer substantial emotional distress. In addition to instilling deep distress, stalking can also escalate to a physical attack, essay, or murder. It's difficult for a target to determine a stalker's trajectory or identify if and how stalking behavior will intensify. It's baffling when you try to understand the tragedy that happened with this case of the Idaho 4. You have 4 students at the University of Idaho, and then we find out that the accused perpetrator, Bryan Kohberger, he actually goes to a completely different university. He is in Washington, and so it makes you wonder, how did their paths cross? How did he get to know these 4 victims, and what is the connection? Did Bryan actually see them in the community? Did he come across them at a restaurant? Did he get to know them, let's say, at an event? How does he know Kaylee, Madison, Ethan, or Xana? And is there any connection? There was some news of him sending messages online, but that has not really been confirmed as far as coming out on the discovery. We don't have that quite yet. We shall see if it's true that he was sending a lot of messages to one of these girls. But for now, we're still trying to put the pieces together. There's got to be some sort of connection with either the restaurant. We know that Maddie and Xana, they were there in the community in Moscow. They worked at that restaurant, the Mad Greek. And so there was opportunity there for him, for Bryan, to watch them, to go into the restaurant, to actually interact with those girls, and to have a reason, a valid reason for talking to them, for being within the same vicinity of them. And so it will be interesting to find out if it comes out that yes, if not that place, maybe not that location, although I do suspect that there was some veracity to that claim, that, Madison and Xana worked there. We will see what happens. It could be kind of top secret at this point. but it might be revealed when we do finally get to see the discovery. Otherwise, how did Bryan get to know these 4 victims? He was working as a teacher's assistant, I believe, at the University of Washington. He had an office, but that would not put him into contact with these 4 University of Idaho students. It has come out that Xana's sister does go to the University of Washington, but as far as her knowing or seeing Bryan or having any contact with Bryan, that is not known at this point. I suppose the investigators would have to most definitely look into that and question if he had any other connections with these students. But at this point, we do know that he was circling their home. He was stalking them. It seems that he was there at various occasions. He would go back. He did go back the next morning. I suppose he went back because he wanted to see if the authorities had arrived, if 911 had been called. He was checking up to see. Maybe he was listening to the news and there was nothing. And so he was so curious. All he could do was drive over and see what is happening at the crime scene. And I guess he would have been very surprised when he arrived. It was about 9 in the morning. So at that point, I suppose the 2 surviving roommates were still sleeping because they did not call 911, as you know, until 11:58. And so what did Bryan see when he arrived on scene? What did he see there at the crime scene? Was he looking for the sheath? Maybe he didn't realize that he had placed or dropped the sheath on Maddie's bed. Maybe he thought he might have dropped it on the way out, that maybe it fell out of his, let's say, pocket on the way out. In all of the excitement, he might not have kept track of what was going on. And so that also leads us to question exactly what his motive was, his motivation. What was his plan? Did he think that there was going to be 2 girls in Maddie's bed? And did he plan on doing away with 4 people, 4 innocent lives? Or was that more so something that became out of control? Things became complicated. He got there, and instead of being just 1 person in Maddie's bedroom, there were 2. And so he had to deal with that. He had his weapon, and so he would be able to use that. I suppose he was going to use that just to threaten 1 person. But then when he was confronted by 2 girls, one of them may be sleeping and then the other one woke up. Possibly Kaylee woke up and then there was maybe a fight between the 2 of them. And so then it turned into something much bigger, is a possibility. It could be that he had 1 target in mind. And then when he arrived at the home, when he got in there, there were 2 people that he didn't count on being there, namely Ethan and Kaylee. The other 2 roommates, the 2 girls, they didn't get involved. Bethany and Dylan, they didn't really get involved. And so by the time the intruder was on his way out, he was probably exhausted. It was probably a lot more than he had planned for, having to confront and take out 4 people. And so his crazy idea to enter that house with a weapon went horribly wrong, and it became possibly something much bigger than he had intended, if he intended to actually do that, or if things got out of control. And so that is the element of surprise. And I bet that he would have been surprised when he got into Maddie's bedroom and he saw that there was 2 people there. Did he turn the light on? Did he see that it was 2 girls, or was it more so in the dark? And then he realized that, that it was Kaylee. He could see that she had, her long blonde hair. And after that, he kind of ran out of time. So he had to come down. He comes down to the 2nd level, and that is when Xana is awake, because she had the DoorDash food delivery. And so she is either eating that or she's sharing that with Ethan. Possibly they hear something. And when this guy, either he exits or they confront him in front of their own bedroom, something like that happened. They did have a fight. There is 2 of them that had defensive wounds. and I presumed that that was Xana and Ethan. Obviously, there's something there where he lost control. He wasn't able to control the situation, and for that reason, he left the sheath right there, and he wasn't able to go back and get it. Maybe he was surprised when he saw that there was 2 other people who were awake. He had to deal with that, and it was too much to handle, but he was able to escape. Since he did have that weapon, and the others were not armed, they didn't have any weapon. They were ready to go to bed. You know, they were together, they were friends, they were having a meal. Ethan and Xana were there sharing one bedroom. Was Ethan going to stay the whole night? I don't know. I had heard some talk that possibly he was going to be leaving, that he wouldn't stay the whole night. But with Ethan, I do have the feeling, I have the sense that he was protecting Xana and that he was protecting the other 2 as well. That maybe he heard something, and having more courage, that he did get up and that he would have went to protect his girlfriend. And for that reason, he also got pulled into it, even though the target, seems to me that the target was on the 3rd floor and that the target was Madison's bedroom, and unfortunately that Kaylee became a victim as well. So let me know what you all think. If you have the same idea or if you're thinking something totally different, let me know in the comments. I look forward to reading your opinions on this case. If you have any questions, please put them down in the comments. If you enjoyed this subject covered in this video, please consider subscribing and tap that like button. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope to have you back real soon. Stay safe and bye for now.